Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. And welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. We have special guest Tim Snyder here today with us. Tim is the Vice President of Program Management at G2 Ops, and we're looking forward to talk to him. Tim and I and Jimmy as well. We go way back to the early days of CSA. In fact, you were there when I first started. I left the government and went to CSA.
I think 2012.
You were working in 750 at the time. And then we got to work together in FRD, 506 FRD.
That was fun.
Yeah, lots of stories. I'm sure some will come up today as we go through various topics.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So to kind of start off, I'll hand it over to you if you want to do just kind of an introduction and tell the people about yourself.
Tell the people. All right, great. Well, let's see now. So I was joined the Navy right out of high school. Immediately, right? My dad drove me down to the recruiting office and said, "Hey, pick a door.
Sign me in."
He said, "Pick a door." He actually gave me a month off. I had no job. I wasn't going to college, so he gave me a whole month to hang out. And then he said, "Hey, pick a door." And the Navy was the first door on the left, and the door on the right was the Army. It had this like $5,000, signing bonus if you decide to be just a regular grunt. And my dad said, I wouldn't recommend that. So I went to the left and joined the Navy. And so 21 years in the Navy, fantastic career. I didn't realize that was exactly the right choice for me at the time, right? It did a lot of great things for me over those 21 years and got me a wife, family, kids, all that good stuff that might not have happened otherwise. So really enjoyed that time. And then when I got out, I had to get a real job, so went to work for General Dynamics, doing construction installation work for NMCI, and the Marine Corps Internet. So I knew nothing about construction. We were doing trenching roads.
Were you running cables and pulling cables or whatever? Running pipes?
Well, I was managing projects doing that. So I took over China Lake out of Ridgecrest, which was like one of the first bases that was going to roll over.
China Lake's beautiful in the summer. Anytime, really.
I heard that too.
That's what they told you before you got there.
Was it cold?
No. China Lake's like a giant empty desert up north.
What year is that when you went there? Or when you got out?
That was 2002 when I went up there. So, the Ridgecrest, the town, and the high desert and China Lake are kind of like tied at the hip. So when the base takes a day off, the city shuts down, right? Because there's so much there. So we were doing construction, putting fiber in the ground, running cable in the buildings. So I kind of learned how to do real project program management there, right? Big budgets, high risk work, tight timelines. We were already 2-3 months behind schedule, and all about managing subcontractors and managing the money. And I learned right off the bat that there's ways to go around the rules and ways not to do that. So we were trying to build out this building, and we needed to get some special fiber, and our subcontractor didn't have enough money to buy it. So my boss said, well, Tim, go buy it with your company, Amex travel card.
Really?
So okay, let's go. So I called up, ordered the special fiber. It was like $25,000, put it on there, and then I go to submit my claim, and it was not good. Come to find out, you can't buy materials on your travel credit card. My boss knew that, of course, so he covered for me. But
ask forgiveness a little. I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Don't ask forgiveness afterwards. So I realized that I need to start learning, how this stuff really works.
Right.
So it's been a few years there. Finished that up, and then moved to a very small company, employee number 19, a company called Salute, and went and rode ships and did knowledge management and net centric warfare training with the strike group staffs. So I got to go back out to sea. That was the first time I actually got to land on an aircraft carrier and do the tail hook thing
Nice.
and then take off again. Which
After all the time in the Navy, you didn't do it till you were a contractor.
yeah, I spent all my time on amphibs, so I spent a lot of time in helicopters, but never on the carriers. But that was a blast when you take off.
Cat shot's awesome, yeah.
Oh, the catch is amazing, but then when as you're taking off, it was a cod, so big prop job. You just kind of dip for a second after you get off the edge of the flight deck, and you just hope that dip doesn't last very long.
Marshall told me about that.
But I think you're also facing the other way. You're like facing backwards too, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly. Yeah, I've done that as well. Yeah, it's just a weird feeling. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you don't know you're gonna dip, my friend did that
Oh,
with
yeah,
for us. They did Scientist at Sea at, at NIWIC or SSC PAC at the time. I never did it, but he did it and he got to fly off a carrier. And yeah, he's like he had no idea that there was when you get off that edge that you go down first, and it's not just a bump. It's it's like a roller coaster
Yeah, you feel
stomach
it.
drop. Yeah,
Yeah, so
goodness gracious.
that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. So
Okay.
that was cool to do that as a contractor afterwards.
Once you dried out, right?
Once I tried, yeah, that's right. Once my stomach came back down
Yes.
where it belonged, my heart slowed down a little bit.
I got out of the water. Plane didn't
Yeah.
necessarily come no good, but
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So from there, CSA or from Salute, I spent a few years there, grew with that company, and then went to CSA where we all met and had a lot of fun.
Right. And you were COO at Salute, right?
Yeah, when I left, I was a COO there, which I had no idea what that meant.
Small company, right?
Yeah, it was a small company, pretty flat leadership structure at the time. Like, when I made COO, everybody reported to me. So I had 60 employees
Oh, that's
directly reporting to me.
decent size.
Yeah, it was pretty good at 750.
It's a lot of direct reports.
Yeah, it is.
It is way too many direct reports,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we had them stashed around the country and Charleston and DC and out at Pax River.
You did like your evaluations every 3 months.
We did
With
annual.
each person.
Annuals.
60 hours times, yeah.
But I did face to face with everybody. I flew
you
to
did
Charleston.
you did them after you fired them.
Right, yeah.
Like, I guess he couldn't even done that. That wasn't physically possible.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. But they were all very senior people, right? I mean, they're retired, 5s, 06s, submarine commanders, aviators, Top Gun guys, stuff like that. So really,
Yeah, most of them low maintenance.
they were very low maintenance. So it was very easy. I learned a lot from them. They were a great crew. Both, they knew we hired them because of their operational experience. Then they could apply that to the programmatic acquisition.
Wasn't Salute started with aviation? Bunch of aviators.
They did, yeah. The owner, John Lyons, was I think he was a P3 NFO,
Got it.
and they got their start kind of doing some work with Boeing.
Got it.
So yeah, it was an experience. So yeah, I was COO for a while. Had no idea what that meant. Learned on the job. Not sure I did a great job at that because I was kind of learning on the job. But anytime when you fail, obviously you learn more than when you succeed. So I learned a lot in those few years I was there.
So how did you get from there? You went to CSA. What was the decision for you to go from Salute to CSA?
It was a contract change, right?
Yeah, it was a contract change. So 750, the contract we had, Centec at that time came in and won it.
Okay.
So I'd been working on site, trying to recover some of the team and what we were doing, and that's they 750, the leadership there, and the TAC Mobile leadership said, "Hey Tim, we really want you to stick around." So that's when I went and talked to Ron Keller and jumped over to.
How'd you end up with CSA instead of Syntec?
Between Salute and Centec, they didn't have the best relationship at that time, and so Centec really had
passed it down.
desire to bring me on. But the PM and DPM
Hey, we won
and
this
750,
contract, CSA. We don't like this guy, but you can have him.
yeah, it was funny.
I
They
think
hired-
that happens more often than not, though, with these contract turnovers, right?
There's some wheeling and dealing going on, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
There was. I mean, all of the people I had on that team. I was the last one to leave. They all got jobs with Centec or their subs. So every single one of them, moved over, and then I jumped over.
Dre. That's what we call flipping a badge. So you have,
Yeah.
one day you
Right.
have.
You're working for the same client. You're doing the same job.
It's just different company.
New company wins the contract. You flip badges.
I mean, in that, depending how close you are with the client or the company, the culture, there might be a little bit of a shift in culture, maybe not. It just depends on the relationship you have. So, That's interesting.
So that brought you to CSA, but that was a good thing, I think,
Yeah, that was a good thing.
overall, till the end, maybe.
Well, I mean, even in the end, right? I mean, the years I had at CSA, the relationships I built, with you and Brian Keller and you and the rest of the team there have carried me, through that transition, made the transition a little bit easier.
Well, Brian was just telling me how you lost the contract for it.
Didn't you
I've
on
heard him say
vacation?
that
Didn't you go
many
on
times.
vacation?
Just kidding.
I thought you went on vacation, right?
Yeah, that's right. I went on vacation and just.
Oh,
I mean,
you did have vacation that happened to be during the proposal writing, but that
He
wasn't.
came back for the end of it, though.
Yeah, I did come back for the orals
And you
piece
did
of it,
orals,
but-
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a vacation that we were going on one way or the other. So
I mean, that whole contract, so roughly 135 people, we lose the contract. Everyone kind of disperses throughout NAVWAR. It was really good for
From
our
a networking
yeah, it
perspective,
was,
could have been better,
yeah,
yeah.
it was pretty cool. So
A lot of them have gone Govy now,
they have.
Yep.
Actually.
so they're clients.
well, we got a bunch of them in 770, which is our kind of
huge.
prime contract right now. So we have a lot of people in there.
I heard Laura Lee, who was at CSA. I don't know if you ever worked with her. She was in 770, but she just got a DPM job.
I think at 170.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, she was in a
She
government
was
770.
770, yeah.
Yeah. So I did work with her a little bit when I went to G2 Ops.
Within NAVWAR, it's a small community.
It is tiny, right? And that's why you need to be very relationships intro while you're working with them, and the end of those relationships matter
Yeah,
because
what goes around comes around.
Yeah, yeah. We just had just saw an email from someone that just did an interview with a couple of our folks at G2 Ops, and the email was pretty much saying, "You wasted my time with this interview. Don't ever do it again." And that's right. I mean, interview with some of our great folks, so I know. That the issue was on his side, but to send that interview in this tiny environment, that is going to go around.
Yeah.
Oh, it's for a job application?
Yeah, he was
Is the person who did the interview?
Yeah, a person that we interviewed.
Yeah, didn't like it.
Didn't like it. It made it well known.
So you fired your recruiter immediately?
Oh yeah, we fired the entire team. Right, I could not believe that we had one. No, we definitely let the people that know that who did the interview that hey, don't worry about this. It's not a big deal. We know that they did a good job on the interview, but those kind of things, those situations matter in a small environment like NAVWAR.
Right, big time.
They do. So that's why I think the relationships we built up at CSA matter so much because they were good relationships. They were strong. They were based on trust and shared goals and things like that. And so that those interactions, whether the people that we had on the team, I didn't work with everybody on the team, right, all the time, but that those relationships matter, and the fact that it was trusted carries on.
Being in a cult is good.
Being
when
in a
things
cult
are
is
going
good.
well.
That's right. You could phrase it that way.
I mean, some people would describe the culture, at least in San Diego, as cult-ish. I agree with you. It wasn't a cult. We weren't doing crazy stuff. But
I think we tried to do a lot. I think people weren't ready for it, and so
Some
it's
people
not.
weren't.
It was not. It's not whether you're drinking the Kool-Aid. It's whether you're swimming in it or not. But
Right.
But I mean, I enjoyed the culture. I thought it was fantastic. It was one of the reasons why I joined, and I love trying to spread that out. We did a lot of really cool things.
next time you interview that guy, do it on Halloween.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, your point, I watched all the people that have left from CSA, and so many of them, like you too, Brian Keller, all this stuff, come back together again in other companies, right? And I don't see that happening a lot, right?
Yeah, I'm still working with Dave and Brian. We're collaborating.
The cool thing about that, I mean, it's deeper than that because in this business, you're always forming teaming, arrangements with other companies. But when you have somebody in another company that you've worked with and you trust and you've established, it just makes it. There's so much more trust that's involved, and so you don't have to worry about, are they going to stab me in the back? I mean, that just doesn't even cross your mind because we're already tight because we have this history. So I think that's where really the benefit comes in.
Yeah, that shared experience and how you both reacted individually and together to those experiences, drive that relationship. So when you meet up again, even if it's been 3 years, 5 years, it's automatic.
Yeah. That's kind of how the military was too, right? I mean, you bounce around from one duty station to the other, and then you run into an old acquaintance, and it's like you never even left. Like you're just that kind of a little bit of that brotherhood and that camaraderie.
Imagine, especially if you started, through boot camp. That's very bonding in that environment, or the academy.
Well, yeah. So I would even say it's just any duty station where you spend 2 to 3 years with somebody that So typically I'll get on Facebook, I'll get someone who wants to be a friend request, and I know who they are. I just don't know where. So I have to go back and look at their history.
Mm-hmm.
Was it from school? Was it from the Navy? Or if it was the Navy, which duty station was it? So it just, it happens much tighter and quicker, I think, sometimes. So.
But did you find, like I found in the Navy overall has a certain culture to it, but then each individual command and organization builds their own culture, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Subcultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say are some of the major differences between a corporate culture that you're familiar with and the Navy? Because there's something about the services.
Yeah. So for me, if I may, when you asked that question, I went right back to this one. We were doing, my wife and the kids were doing space A flights to Germany. We were flying out of Dover, and basically you're on standby. Sometimes you're on standby for a couple of days, just waiting for that military flight to come in that has space. It was great with the kids because we didn't have enough money to fly to Germany, but that's where my wife's family is at.
Yeah, but you're at the airport all day waiting with your kids?
Exactly.
That sounds terrible.
No, so we called it our little amazing race, right?
That was before screens.
Yeah, so
How did you keep them busy?
well, you
and
probably read
entertained?
books and did other things, but
Wait,
here's
what's a book?
here's the difference. So we were at this one particular time, we were there for 2 days. I mean, it was a long 2 days. So my wife and I said, well, we're just going to go grab a hotel room so we can get a shower. The kids can go jump in the pool. And the whole time, our kids were playing with this other lady who was trying to get back to her husband because he was coming back on R&R, and she had 3 kids. So it was just her with 3 kids, and their kids were playing with our kids.
I remember this story.
Yeah, and
You
so we
invited them.
yeah, we said, hey, do you mind if we just we'll take your kids. We're gonna go to a hotel. We're gonna jump in the pool, relax. You can go get a shower because they had showers there. And she's like, absolutely. She was so thankful. And then we took her kids. We went in the pool, had a great time.
Stranger.
Well, here's what the part was. We're in the pool, and I turned to Verena. I'm like, we might need to call the terminal just so we can get the mom's name because I don't think we know who she.
They could take the kids, they could be gone.
But that's the level of trust in the military.
Right.
She was a military spouse with her kids, and so were we. So she totally trusted us, but we didn't even have her name. So we called the terminal, got her name, and exchanged phone numbers just in case. But we brought him back later on that day, and she was ready to go. And then we caught our flights that night, I think it was. But that's the difference right there, where you just level of trust and have that military experience.
Inside community.
Yeah, I'm sure Tim's probably got stories, but that you kind of get what I'm saying, I think. So that to me is what the difference is.
There's a base of shared experience already, a culture that exists for a purpose, right? It's the defense of the nation, all that stuff. Everybody's sacrificing the families and the military member. So that exists already as a structure to grow that culture.
Yeah.
The purpose is very strong in the military.
Yeah, and servant leadership is really you're there to take care of your people, right, or the people around you. So I think servant leadership is just prevalent throughout that military culture because you're there for a bigger reason.
See, but I see a lot of areas, and I don't know if this is where we want to go with the discussion, but I've seen a lot of areas, and I've not seen it personally, but from all the stories, because I've had 20 years of sea stories from all the people that I've worked with over the years, where in the Navy in particular, especially like on a carrier, you have kind of the servant leadership is missing because you have like separate places where the officers eat versus where the people eat, the enlisted eat. And there's kind of this almost ego separation or different quality of life that you get that's not, I would argue, is not really part of what servant leadership is about compared to like the Marines where the frontline leaders eat last kind of stuff. There are some areas in the Navy where I didn't necessarily see that in the culture. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
In the wardroom, the captain usually eats first, which I think they got that backwards. I'm not saying it's perfect. So in the Marine Corps has it right. Where they eat last. But and so I really, it goes back to some of these subcultures that we talked about. Some commands, there is a culture that's there.
Right.
And if it's done right, then you have the officers, helping take care of the enlisted, and then you have the enlisted helping take care of the officers. It goes both ways, right?
Yeah. I guess it also depends on what does a particular culture define or accept as what it means to take care of your people. And if everyone's on the same page about that, and the perceptions are that I'm an enlisted and I do feel that my leader's trying to take care of me, even if they eat first and get to eat in a nicer place by themselves or get their own quarters or whatever, then that's really what matters from a servant leadership perspective.
But I think there's a difference there, right? So I spent most of my career working with the Marines, deploying with them, living with them, doing all kinds of crazy stuff with them. And so that, that leaders eat last thing that the Marine Corps follows. I usually see that in the field, right? When they're out in maneuvers, they're living in tough conditions. Back on the base or on the ship, it's just like the Navy, right? The officers eating in a separate room, enlisted.
You think that's because of the Navy culture that they're kind of integrated into on the ship, or is that because it's just how they would work even if it wasn't?
You were an officer, I was enlisted. And so the issue is that you still have to have that barrier between the two, because when the officer or the senior enlisted says, go die on that hill, go do this thing that I know you don't want to do, and it's not something you would do naturally, you have to go do it, right? And so, but you have to also believe that, they have your best interest in heart and the mission at heart from your leadership, right? So that those two things have to come together, right? Yeah. So you need some separation, but that leadership also has to prove, and the culture has to support the fact that your leaders are doing the right thing for you and to achieve the mission.
Yeah. I think gets it right is the SEAL teams, like the way their culture is, work hard, play hard. Right. But that line between officer and enlisted is somewhat blurred. It's still there. It's respect. It's still there. But like they're on first name basis. Like they're just on a whole different, that's an elite, force, which I've always admired. And I, at the academy you mentioned, we get exposed to all the different communities, and I've always admired the SEAL teams because I think they just get
the power distance is
it's much lower, and so they just get it. But they're in a different. Their mission is completely different than somebody sitting on a ship doing whatever they are. So yeah, I agree. There is a time and place for some of those difference in rank structure. But any junior officer comes on board and thinks they know more than his senior chief that's just wrong. They're going to get taught really quick. That's not the case at all. Yeah. You need those senior enlisted folks to train up those junior officers going forward. So that's super important.
So speaking of which, and my OCD, we just got it. So after CSA, you went to G2 Ops. And then that's where you're at now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Right.
5 years.
Well, we can come back to that.
Okay.
But one of the things I learned a few years ago with Eric Patton in particular, maybe we get him on this podcast. Yeah. He'd be fun to talk to. He can tell us about all his Lego things he's doing in retirement while he's swimming in his pool in Texas without paying taxes on whatever they don't tax.
Who doesn't pay?
Eric Patton. He's a guy that we worked with at the NEF. He was our production manager.
And he didn't pay taxes? Is that what you said?
No, in Texas you don't pay state taxes on.
Oh, there's still no state tax. Got it. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And your entire retirement's not taxable.
Where am I going?
Yeah.
So if you're retired military and you move from California to Texas, the amount of money you get to keep goes up a lot because you're paying less.
Yeah.
So, but what I learned from him was there's a big difference between even numbered and odd numbered chiefs.
Significant difference.
And I remember you telling me the story about, I think you're the one that taught me what a closet party is. Not like firsthand.
He's like, I'm not going there.
No. But I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So
those are after hours.
Yeah.
Okay. So we won't go there. That's not a real thing. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, maybe you can talk about, because that's along the lines of military leadership, the whole chief, senior chief, master chief, I guess.
Yeah. The chief ranks in the Navy are different than the other senior enlisted ranks in the other services, right? It's, you put on a different uniform, when you make chief, E7, and then you live separately, you eat separately, all that stuff. I mean, it's a thing, right? But within the chief's ranks, chief, senior chief, master chief, there's, they always pick on the senior chiefs because they're even numbered chiefs and they don't do anything, right? So it's kind of like, when you're in junior enlisted, moving up to like when you become a second class, E5, you're not a first class, so you're not a leading petty officer.
That's one of the best ranks in the Navy.
Yeah, and you're not, a junior, E3, E4, so you're not doing all the work, so you're just kind of like making sure everything gets done, and you're just passing the orders down from there. And so that's how they look at it.
Good management, as they say, right? Telling other people what to do.
Yeah, exactly. I would just say, senior chiefs are, provide that connective tissue and make everything work better. The grease to make the gears not grind.
Well spoken by a retired senior chief.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it has nothing to do with it, right? I just see the world as it is.
Yeah. Everyone's perception is just their perception, except yours. It's reality.
Just how it is.
Can't argue with that.
No.
Why don't we kind of shift back over then? One of the things I thought was pretty interesting with your current role is that you've grown more than doubled your team since you got there with all these cyber contracts and work that you've gotten with model-based system engineering, which I don't know that we need to talk about the specifics of what that is. I'm more interested, I think, from a leadership perspective about what you've really taken from your other roles, whether it's the Navy or CSA or Salute, and what you've learned and the challenges you've had. And as WD-40 calls, they don't call failures mistakes or failures, they call them learning opportunities. Sounds like you had a lot of learning opportunities at Salute.
Yeah, that's the story of my life.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I learn best is when those opportunities arise.
Sure. I'm interested in hearing about, what were some of those biggest challenges and learning opportunities or learning experiences from the scale and the growth that you've seen? Because when, I started at CSA, we were about 70 employees. We were smaller, I think, when you started, but around that. Going from 70 to close to 200 is a big difference. Mm-hmm. I think 60, 70, you're still kind of on the tail end of not really needing a lot of process. Communication still happens pretty seamlessly. Everyone can, for the most part, keep track of each other. I think there's the tribal number of 150 is around that, where you can't just mentally keep track of all the different relationships between people. So once you get over 150, close to 200, it changes a lot. So anyways, I'm just kind of curious, what are some of your biggest learning experiences or challenges so far with all this?
Yeah, I think so. Up till coming to G2 Ops, all of the work I'd done and managed was all services based, right? So PM support, acquisition, logistics, stuff like that.
On site.
On site, people, working hand in hand with the customers.
Right.
G2 Ops is different, although we still have some of that on-site interaction with the customers, which is critical. But it's an engineering firm, right? Almost everybody is an engineer. I am not an engineer, right? I can barely speak engineer. I think there's 2 E's in there somewhere. I don't know. But so I had to learn a lot, right? I had to learn what it meant to be an engineer. How do you manage engineering projects? What's that engineering V, and what does that mean, right? From a requirements to sustainment and all of that, right? And then learn how the interaction between engineers and on projects is a little bit different, but so much the same at the end of the day, right? So I think, G2 Ops for me is a very unique culture from an engineering perspective in a couple different ways. One, we hire a lot of very junior engineers just out of college.
Had very favorable salaries, I've heard.
Well, we are definitely not the cheapest out there because, we like to
Tough
hire
to get
the
them.
best.
Competition's tight right now.
It is very tight. It's very tight. And other companies, big companies are now driving those rates up even higher.
Right.
So not just us, but we hire really good people and we want to keep them around because the time they invest in the company is of value, right? So it's worth making sure that they earn what they deserve. So, there's always this, I've always heard this thing about, the young kids come out of college now, they always need a pat on the back and, all this for everything they do. And, while there's all the Gen Z and all that, there are some differences there. People at their basic level are not different, right? They want to do good things. They want to know that they're working on something that matters, is important. They want to know what they're doing is valued. And to me, in an engineering company, more important than anything else is trust. They need to be able to work in an environment where there's trust because that's how they can be more innovative, right? Engineers, there's a standard process. You do all, you know better than I about, and you haven't gone to the academy, what that engineering process is. But there's a lot of trade space in there for innovation. And so we give our engineers, junior or senior, a lot of trust, a lot of trade space. We want them to be innovative. We don't want them just to bring the client what they ask for. We want to go above and beyond that and think about what they really need. And so we put a lot of trust in our junior engineers and allow them to go off and do great things, right? To steal a term from
it's a great term.
Autonomy,
from CSA.
sounds like.
Yeah, autonomy. And
I've
so we've
heard
had
relatedness and autonomy so far, and competence.
No, it's all there. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking about motivation and it's self-determination theory, and those are the three. You remember Daniel Pink and Drive? We had that in CSA. So giving them that choice to innovate or give them that space to innovate is super important. It's probably one of the more important things. And then the fact that they feel like they're getting better, and as they're innovating, they're improving their
and having
competence.
meaning and purpose and connection with each other.
You just hit the
You
hit the trifecta.
what you just
and all that.
described was the basic needs of motivation.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I read. I don't read those kind of books cover to cover. Do
No,
I
but
memorize the
but the
terminology?
whole-
But I get it.
That's the coolest stuff that I think is that, that's why I'm doing a PhD. I can be the asshole that goes and digs into these giant books and learns all that stuff. But what I always find is fascinating is that you don't need to know any of that stuff. And through your experience, what you're describing is those things. Now, what I do think, though, is what's helpful is for leaders to understand it at least a basic level, because that's what makes it repeatable. So if you understand that we need trust and it, I just got to treat my people well, that's one thing. But if you understand that what it means to treat my people well is to provide them autonomy, which is based in trust, and to create connection, which is also to a certain extent based in trust as well. Trust is one of those foundational kind of concepts. But then you can make it very repeatable in what you're doing and how you, work with people across, over time.
Yeah. So I think that's made a huge difference, not only in our ability to execute for our customers, but also when new people come into the company. If there's a strong company culture, or someone comes in and they don't fit, and they'll stick out like a sore thumb, and either they'll realize they don't belong there, or you'll realize they don't belong there, and then they move on. And that's important for them as much as it is for the folks within the company. So as we've built that culture, right, I believe, and some people can disagree with this, that leadership, the owners of the company, all this stuff, can create the environment in which that culture can grow, but it's the people that create that culture. Right, and create that connective tissue between people and build that trust. So when they hit a problem, a snag, or they have an issue, they feel comfortable going and talking to somebody. But that constantly needs to be fed, right? It's not
and reinforced
all the time,
right?
With people, with the team, by examples and sharing across. And so the hardest thing in any company and execution is, that vertical alignment, right? The leadership piece, the stovepipe, if you will, is natural, right? Hey, we got a technical lead, we got a PM, just like in the military. Those lines of communications and connectivity usually are pretty strong. It's the horizontal integration across that really makes a difference in execution, especially in engineering, right? Sharing what you've learned, right? Knowing I have a background in knowledge management. I did that for a long time in the Navy, helped build up their management practices, and went out and trained all their folks. So that cross sharing is difficult to do, and you have to force it, right? You have to put things in place to allow that to happen. As you mentioned earlier, it's easier when the company's smaller, when you have 50, 60 people, right? You're just trying to survive month to month, year to year, bring in the revenue, keep the work going. As you guys are experiencing, make payroll, which is important, right?
I was telling Tim about some of our cash flow challenges right now.
As I listen to the language that the three of you have in common, and which I have none. That's why I asked, what's the sort of difference between being in a service organization, coming out of the armed forces, and going into day-to-day business,
commercial company.
It seems to me that there's a prominence of purpose that's different than in the average corporation.
Yeah,
and that prominence is of money, of profit, the idea of what are you doing? Well, if we're not making money, we're not doing our job. And we're going to grow. We're going to go 10% next year. Now we're going to go 5.5. That kind of stuff. Those preferences for language and emphasis, is quite different, because you guys really do respect the technical skills that are necessary to provide the customer, which is in this case a very functional purpose of services, the armed services. It's phenomenal.
So
huge.
I think the point, the language that you use in your day-to-day conversations within the organization and the team matter. And so if you're talking about money, hey, growth, hey, go find another position. If you drive people to focus on that, then that becomes the overriding thing. which we don't do, right? I mean, that's never been something that I think helps a company culture grow so that it performs well. The idea is of what we focus on is that point of interaction between the employee and the customer.
So take, for example, a hero in 20 years ago was a guy who said, we're going to dismiss the bottom 10% of this organization.
Jack
Boy, Jack.
Welch.
You got it?
Neutron Jack, yeah.
And I sat next to him one time, and I was just so turned off by the kind of language and emphasis he gave profit as opposed to who's doing it and what's the quality of the meaning of the work that you're doing. So one of the things that's it's joyful to hear is that there are organizations that do what you guys do, and the way you come at it, it's a fraternity. It's a phenomenon that you pass on, whether you went to Annapolis or you were in the Navy as a basic
Enlisted guy, so I just came
enlisted
into
guy,
it, yeah.
but you still had that naval / service underlying reason for why you're existing and what you're doing and what's meaning.
Yep, that focus.
And so as you start to think about leadership, how does that fit? I mean, for example, if Jack Wills walked into your office and said, I want you to dismiss the lower 15% of your personnel and I want it done by the end of the month, what would you say? Your first response would be, not even close.
That's not how we work. And I mean, so I'll say when I retired from the Navy, the last 6 months, I read all of Jack's books.
Did you?
Right? Because I was like, well, I'm coming out of the Navy. I'm going out in the commercial world. Yeah. I said, I need to figure out what it's like out there.
That's a lot of books.
Oh, it was a lot of books, right? And so while I will say I got some things out of it, right? There's obviously some value in there, right? He's a guy that had a lot of experience, drove growth. That 20% piece, yeah, you don't.
The bell curve.
Yeah, the bell curve, all that stuff. But what I got from that is you do need to understand how your people are performing, right? And then figure out if there are people that aren't performing well, why is that? Is it culture? Are they in the position they don't belong in? They're not motivated. In the Navy, they beat on, like when I came in, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That's everything, right?
Yay, everybody.
Yeah, that's the number one thing, right? That was our leadership training, was all about that. You have to dig in and figure out why those people are not doing as well as maybe they could. And then as well as why is the people that you think are the top, why are they doing well, right? And why is there a difference there? So that's a lot of what I took from Jack's books is that you have to assess people all the time. In the military, there's a standard, annual performance evaluation process. And it's changed over the years. It's, good, bad, whatever. There's a lot of good and bad built into that system, but you're not always evaluating people, right? Here, I spend a lot of time evaluating the people and the organization. Or in commercial, right, out in my job now, because you can make more changes. I have more opportunity to make changes that impact the culture and the people and to focus on those things. So that, I wouldn't take from Neutron Jack that, hey, just swag out the bottom 20% because that will have a better impact. I take on, hey, let's look at the folks that are not performing well, that aren't happy, whether it's, the bottom 5, bottom 20, I'm not even sure I would use bottom, right? Hey, those people that aren't executing or don't seem to be happy, let's figure out why that is, and help them, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the important part is the asking the why and then doing something. So many leaders get complacent; they just don't want to do that extra work, and the status quo is good enough. Yeah. And so I think the fact that you're actually considering, okay, what's going on here? Why are they not performing, at a higher standard or whatnot? And that's
well, it's hard work, right?
100%.
If everything's moving along, no one's bringing you problems. And then to go in there and
mess around with it, get the lower 10%.
But I think that's a big differentiator between what I call management versus leadership. Right. And we get, especially in the government side, your main role most times is management. It's managing the task, making sure the project's going along, is on track, it's on schedule. And so when you have an underperformer, that person is negatively impacting your ability to get your management job done. And so the leadership piece is looked at as just this extra thing that I shouldn't have to deal with because so-and-so is underperforming. But we need leaders, not managers, to be able to help people get to where they need to be. And nobody's going to be perfect or be, all the time. And so everyone needs different levels of support. Maybe we would call that situational type of support. If you've heard of that, Drea.
It sounds kind of.
Where's he getting these ideas? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. But I think that's a key difference. Although, actually, this is a pretty interesting question. I don't know if there's been any research on this, but you're kind of insinuating that there's this purpose from people coming out of the military that helps keep a focus on the commercial side, maybe on the purpose and not the money. But I've seen a lot of people come out of the military very controlling.
Let's not separate the. I agree. There's a command and control mentality in the services.
But different than the money, profit piece.
Yeah. So we actually saw this when we did those studies at the NEAF with the EWPA. There's meaningful work. Our numbers on meaningful work were really high compared to the industry standard.
Yeah, a lot of veterans.
And I think a lot of that was because of where they were working.
That's where I'm going. And so the language and the ways that when you use the word leadership, it carries with it an underlying set of ideas that are common and they're not questioned. They're just there. And so when I started creating leadership ideas for people to sort of go through a curriculum and so forth and so on, you would, if you don't approach the word and turn the word into behaviors that are, because it comes out differently in your organizations. You wouldn't do what Jack Welch was proposing during the old days when Jack was, he hacked that company. It was a GE to down to nothing. He got rid of the nuclear division, which was producing rods for
nuclear reactors.
He just did it arbitrarily.
So I wonder if that was more like situational because of what he was faced with, and so.
Well, he was probably reducing. He taking the successful parts and selling them off, and then and calling that profit.
Wouldn't that be like a very economic or economist kind of view? It's a very rational. Well, if I have 10% of my people that are the lowest end, I just chop that off, and now I'm performing better.
Exactly, it looks better. And we got the.
But that's not how people work.
Well, no. One of the things that was driving at Friedman, what was the purpose of organizations?
Profit.
But for who?
For the investors.
That's right. It didn't have anything to do with the client and who they were servicing and what was the quality of the stuff you were giving.
Capitalism 101.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that
do you know anything about economics?
I would argue. I wouldn't define them as economists. I wouldn't define them as economists so much as just a cutthroat businessman.
No, I get it. But I'm just saying when I know very little about
it's just a big word.
Economics.
I think
I can't even say it.
It's okay.
Well, obviously.
Just put down money.
Is there two E's in
Meanwhile,
that
you're
one too?
teaching it, but I know that there's the rational person and then the
Yeah. So this is always a major assumption in economics that we're all rational. We all make
which we're
rational
not.
decisions.
But that's so. All I'm saying is that that the mentality of if I take the low 10% of my company and I just cut it off, that's a very rational perspective, which is to me that's that economist kind of viewpoint. So that's all I meant by
But you're looking at that bottom 10, 20% as if they have no value.
Right, yeah.
No, I know that's the whole problem.
That's the
Is that those people could be some of your highest performers. It's a matter
Technically,
of how can
most
you
proficient.
Yeah, how can you create an environment that's best for them? And maybe some of them need to go, but maybe some of your high performers. There's those really, I think, powerful stories where you have those examples of the very high performer. I've had some in the NEAF and before that, where they're super high performers. I can think of a few names. I'm not going to name them. But you need to let them go because culturally they're just toxic, right? Or they're they're negatively impacting everybody else. And so while they're out in front leading the way in terms of performance, it's pushing others down because of the way they work within their culture.
And I've seen that, right? I mean, so you go back to your point of leaders coming out of the Navy and not being able to make that transition. Mm-hmm. When I was in the Navy, my whole view of leadership was when I get into a leadership position, I get to tell people what to do.
Right, it's a power
It's a
focus.
power thing,
Yeah.
right? So that power dynamic, right? And part of it is embedded in the fact that as the more senior you are in the military, the more responsibility you have, and with that must come the authority, right? Those two things have to stay together.
Right.
And so if people come out of the Navy and that's what they got, is that leadership means authority, and they bring that, and we see that all the time. They bring that into their, their new civilian job or contractor job, and it doesn't work out because that's not.
Even if you have guys that are still in the military, or women, and still in the military, and now in charge of a bunch of civilians,
Yeah.
with that same mindset, it just doesn't work. And you see that. Well, we
You see
that.
it.
But even I would
over.
argue, even with other military, it's not going to work as well.
No, because you have that power dynamic. No, because I think like to
It
the
can
point-
work more in the military.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, because you have this power dynamic. You're my captain. I'm gonna do what you say.
One of the beauties of the last 20 years teaching at USD was that we were in a master's program, and we were offering a program in master's in
MSc now.
leadership. And we got a number of students that thought it was an MBA, not a master's in leadership, but an MBA course. I'm going to get my MBA. And those people that they recruited were not service oriented at all. They were. I mean, when I say service, I'm talking about the Navy or the Army and so forth. That's what I meant. But we were getting SEALs. We were getting actual guys that had been out in the field and doing, heavy, daring, scary, dangerous stuff. And then they decided that they were going to leave this, go to the Navy, get out of the SEALs active duty, and quote, learn leadership. And those guys were the leaders in that classroom so perfectly. You couldn't believe the things that they were saying, how they were helping people do the best job they could. And of course, they were doing stuff that was dangerous and they were going to die, I mean, one story I'll never forget, he was leading a group of people on a reconnaissance mission, and they got behind the bad guys got behind them. They shot them to pieces, and so they were scattered all over the. At night, there was, you don't leave anybody. If they're dead, you take them. If they're not, you don't leave them until they got help and so forth. So that's the kind of life that you have as a leader from those guys in a master's program that thought that was an MBA, and some of the guys were going, "What?" But the SEALs were so. Just a story finished. The SEALs decided to go chasing after the one person that had done the damage on the, it was an all night, chase them through the fields and chase them through the countryside, and they finally trapped the person that they were trying to get. And when they got face to face with him, it was a 14-year-old boy. And the SEALs were fighting about whether you going to put this kid out of your misery because he had killed a number of the
soldiers.
SEALs. Yeah, and he said, "I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it." They turned him over to the friendlies in the country, but there was at one point a real challenge to keep the SEALs from killing this person. Now, I mean, that's a very different form of leadership. And he was talking about, for me, the value in what we were doing was not going to be repeated through the same despotic behaviors that they were fighting right in front of them. And so that kind of stuff, when you start talking about leadership, and how did he said, I had a hard time trying to keep my friends from doing something that I thought was against my value system.
Well, that's why, leadership is so difficult because of that, because there's a burden associated with it. You take on the responsibility for the decisions you make, the leadership you do. And that not everybody can do that or wants to do that.
So is your point in terms of like what we're talking about with command and control, there's a time and a place?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would say that it's also command and control is a lot about who's making the decisions or how decisions are made, right? And so there's a time when you're on the front line and somebody's shooting at you, you don't have time to sit down and say, "All right, guys, what do you all think?"
No.
Should we shoot back?
No.
No, you got to have the leader, and he
And-
goes command and control, and he's going to
right,
say, no, go. You go here, you go there.
Right, but I think what he's describing was not a time. They were probably shooting back at the 14-year-old. But the moment comes when you're confronted.
With a values
Yes.
decision.
Well, yeah,
Values,
sure.
yeah.
No, I get all that.
Yeah.
But I guess where I was going before was more about bringing that command and control from the battlefield type of environment into an environment that's not the battlefield environment, where it's more of a cognitive, creative, especially like engineering and stuff.
So I think the difference is, as a leader, whether you're in command and control or not, are you asking the deeper questions, whether it's like the why are we not performing to where we need to be, or when you're confronted with such a moral dilemma, like to really critically think through it. Not all leaders do that. Sometimes they don't want the responsibility of having to make that choice, and they just make a decision haphazardly. So I think that the question is, how deep are they really?
Command and control for me is more relevant in procedures and processes that they've agreed upon to go with, the timelines, the trail that they're going to
We've
go.
been practicing. We've got the process.
absolutely.
We've
What I'm
agreed
trying to say,
already on how it needs to happen.
What I'm saying, there's two
That makes sense.
different leaders in that same situation of command and control. There's the leader that just does it because that's what the book says, but then there's the leader that in that same situation that considers, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Values based.
Exactly.
And why is the person I'm leading
Yes.
is going to do what I want them to do?
Exactly. So if we would label that as value based,
Okay.
that person can transfer anywhere, corporate America, military, and they can do great things. So, but that other person who doesn't take that into consideration because he's just doing what the book tells him to do, I would argue that person is going to be not going to be well suited to transition to other domains.
Well, the guy that I was telling you about that was the leader said the hardest part was that 14-year-old kid had just taken the life of one of my best friends.
Yeah. Imagine the amount of compassion and empathy
Yeah,
he had to
and
muster.
how do you stop?
That's good stuff.
The emotions around that, right? And that's not easy, right? And I would say that as a leader, it's easier to make those decisions if you have other leaders around you, or you have a
You gotta
team that
have
you're
a
working with
community.
that will support you in that and understand that. If you don't have that, it's much harder to make that kind of decision in that moment, right?
100%. Yeah, definitely. This is a pretty good conversation. I'm really enjoying this.
So what else, Tim? What are some of your other?
This is great.
Sorry,
Oh,
Tim.
this is great.
No, it's all
This is
good.
really
I'm enjoying this too, right?
What are some of
This
your
is
other
great.
challenges?
Yeah. None. That's it. No.
This has been one of the more deeper conversations. Thank you for coming. This is great. We keep going. I mean,
No, so let me go back to what you said earlier on, the question you asked, like, what is the difference between a military organization with a person maybe already and then
Exactly.
out in the civilian world, right? And I would say the one difference, and then everything else is the same, the one difference is it's pre-built, right? There's already a purpose. You know what you join the military, you know what you're supposed to do, right? It's protecting the country, going to war, all that good stuff. After that, so in, like in G2 Ops and in CSA and other places I've been, you have to build that purpose, right? The military is already there.
GTOP stands for what?
that's his company is working for.
Go
Yeah,
Go operations.
go ops.
Yeah, go ops.
Golden goose.
You put him on the spot.
You put me on the spot because I just heard the story like a month or two ago because I asked the same question and someone told me, so I'll have to tell you later because I can't remember what it is. You have to kill me. Yes.
But that's a great point. I think where you're going is that you have to build that purpose. You have to get people to buy into that purpose.
And it's a harder thing to do because your staff is not static. Your employees are not static. They're coming and going. The company's changing, right? The work you're doing, your customers change. And you don't have people, with you 24/7 sometimes, right? So like you go on a ship, you go on deployment, you're together 24/7, 6, 8, 9 months at a time. There's lots of chances for interaction to reinforce that shared purpose and the relationships and all that. Whereas a company, people come in the morning, they leave in the evening, so you have a very short period of time to do that. So it's much more important to always be thinking about and hitting what that shared purpose is. When certain things happen, you celebrate them. When you have recurring meetings to make sure you're talking about that shared purpose. You build things like, at G2Ops, growth, security, and brand is, our main thing, right? Our CEO has set that as our priorities, and everything comes underneath that. Well, brand is all about making sure that every interaction that people have with G2Ops and the employees are positive, and people walk away with a good feeling, right? That is not easy to do in this business, right? Because you're constantly, even in engineering, people give you requirements, say, hey, we need this. Mm-hmm. If they're not engineers, they really don't know what that means when they ask for that, right? And so you have to help them get there. But so you have to build that culture and build the purpose within the company. And so we leverage, what the military does, right? We support the Navy, right? Vast majority of our work is Navy. We do some Air Force. We've done some Coast Guard. So we tie our purpose to that purpose, right? The things that we're doing are helping those people out at the tip of the spear, right? And it matters. We do a lot of submarine work, so it's a pretty critical time for submarines right now. So we build that purpose into what we do, and then tie the people together. Hey, you're here to support the team, right? What is it going to take? What do you guys need? And as leaders, I keep saying, the more senior you are, the more people you work for, right? That just kind of standard servant leadership piece. And that's about making sure that interaction between the employee and the customer, that the employee is able to manage that and make sure that is a good one, meaning they know they have a backup, they have a team that can help them out, we give them the right training, we teach them how to work with a customer, we set positive examples, we celebrate when those interactions go well, and then when they don't go so well, we find ways to, all right, what happened here and how do we make it better? And you talked earlier on, like at a small company at 50, 60, 70 people, you don't have a lot of processes in place. But I think we were well ahead of that game. We were already putting in well-documented process for how we execute. And we've really focused on that over the last 3 or 4 years because that helps build that structure as you get bigger so people know their defined role. When you define the processes, they know what they're supposed to do within that process. They know their value in that process. It helps. It doesn't seem like but it's a huge deal.
It takes that piece off the table. So you don't have that as a challenge of people doing a bunch of different things different ways. It sets the expectations to standardize it.
And it makes it all sustainable and, over long periods of time. So that's how
And you said you link to the purpose of the client, or that the harder part of a commercial is about the purpose. But I agree with you. I'm also hearing, though, this very strong, for your company or organization, and it's the same as how we led at CSA together, is there's a very high emphasis on supporting the people too. And I think that is a different purpose than the, support the client, support the military, support our defense, or, the society kind of thing. It's also, it's a different value base or whatever. So I think there's both. There sounds like what I'm hearing is there's both.
It's definitely both a focus on that. And part of it's because we put a lot on our people, like our junior people, we expect a lot out of them, right? And those expectations matter, and then we help them achieve that. So I think they'd appreciate that. One of the things we've done is we have kind of like a mid-level leadership course that we call STELLA, Senior Technical Engineering Leadership Academy. And so people are moving up more into mid or senior engineering roles. It's about a course that goes several months long, and they get training on engineering. I train on program management, contract, stuff like that. But they also get leadership training. We bring in outside leaders, like we brought in, a very senior SEAL commander to give briefs. We brought in a retired general from the Army who was a leader, and she talked about leadership.
I know a really big company to talk about like motivation for you guys.
Really? I mean, I don't see it.
Tim.
I don't really see it.
You're bringing in people from the outside.
Motivation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's some motivation right now. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the best way to motivate.
Tim's bringing in people from the outside for help with leadership. And he's sitting here looking at me telling me about the other people. I was saying that, I was
like, this is going to go off the rails really quick.
I really applaud you for doing that. I think that's fantastic.
It is important, but we also take those people and we fly them to each office. And they interact with other people in the company.
I'm really good at flying.
Are you really?
Yeah.
No, not the leadership, are the people in the course. So the employees. Right, so they will go to each employee will go to the other offices as a team.
Yeah, cross training.
Yeah, to interact, so they get to meet those people,
No,
right?
that's really cool.
Because that putting a face to the name is important, especially as we build these leaders, and so they get exposure to those other
trading
offices.
cards?
We do not do trading cards.
We can help you with that too.
I'm sure.
We just rolled out trading cards.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I still tell people, I'm like, when I was at CSA and that came out, I was like, I think that's the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that's what I thought. I was like, this is ridiculous. My senior chief started coming on.
But
Like, that is just.
I hear a but
silly, right?
coming.
But,
Thank
but
you.
I was wrong. Right? It was fantastic, right? It really brought people together. Now,
Yeah. Outside of the money piece.
I was going to say the
both-
money piece was, again, money ruins everything, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of caused some issues in there, right? But it was great because it was
Oh,
a
yeah.
conversation starter, brought
Even with
people
the
together.
clients, some of the clients got involved. And
Oh, yeah. They were like,
I
well, we
got to
want some
learn-
of these cards.
I
How
got
do
to
we
learn
get
from
them?
people on the East Coast. Like I would have never got to know those people.
Yeah.
I get those trading cards all the time. I got to get familiar names and faces. So yeah.
Yeah, so those kind of things, matter, right? We still have once a month an all company, all hands, where the CEO briefs and each of our VPs brief about what's going on. We, in the office, we celebrate birthdays. In fact, we just did it yesterday, celebrate birthdays, give out awards, stuff like that. So those moments to even celebrate the little things, bringing people together, those interactions matter and help build up that shared purpose.
right.
Not very good at the card thing.
We gave Dre a set of our cards.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I'm not really good at them. I tried. They don't work. I tried to get this other guy over here to trade an original Mickey Mantle card. He
didn't
for
do
one
it?
of mine, and he wouldn't do it.
Now, wait a
Aaron
second.
Robbins rookie card?
So wait a second. So you're saying that you guys don't believe that your cards have that much value?
He doesn't.
Maybe
I
not
mean,
yet.
Maybe not yet. They'll get there though.
Baby Ruth.
I told
Maybe
him
for a
I'd
candy
sign
bar.
my card for him. And
Did you really? Oh, great value
Oh,
immediately.
we forgot to do that. We were going to bring Sharpies and let people sign each other's cards.
Nice.
Oh God!
No,
So-
the employees loved it. I mean, they all.
Yeah.
I mean, there
So
was
here's a question for you. How much do you think those kind of activities, like those initiatives, like the clear initiatives, like a trading card initiative or the happy hour kind of things, versus just the day-to-day good leadership, building trust, quality interactions with the people on the job. How much do you think one or the other weighs into that overall people-focused culture? And do you think one's more important than the other?
I think it's all important because everybody is different. And so each person will get something different out to each one of those, right? Some people, never show up to happy hours, right? That's just not their thing. But they may enjoy that card, or they may enjoy, the recognition, right? Maybe that's what drives them, right? That they're part of a team, they get recognized for what they do. So each one is kind of that building block for that culture that drives it. And some are more valuable to one person than another, but each have a place. I think they're all important. And you have to constantly assess that, right? Because the dynamics of your team and your organization change over time as people come in and out, as the organization grows. Maybe you're bringing on different contracts or whatever. Events happen, right? Things happen in the life of every company, good and bad. And how you come out of that and how that changes you matters, right? It changes the organization from that. So you have to constantly look at those things and bring in new and refresh. And the things that are working, don't get rid of them, right? Keep them, right? We do an annual Jeopardy competition, right? Each office, before Christmas goes
Terrible
through. They
at
do.
Jeopardy. Is that your idea?
No, it was not my idea. It was one of the owner's ideas. He comes up with great ideas for stuff like this. So each office has a Jeopardy competition, and then whoever's the winner, I'll go back to our company
Tournament style.
headquarters
That's
in
fantastic.
December.
I love that.
And then
Fly
they
'em all.
compete. Yeah, they all go to Virginia Beach, and then they compete there. And it's a big deal, right? People
it's like
love
real
it.
Jeopardy, real Jeopardy style.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's great. And it's, some people really like that. Some people, not their thing. That's fine. But it's
Other
one
people
more piece of that
Want to go
puzzle.
do Ragnar's or something like that, right?
Yeah, Ragnar's, right? Yeah. I still remember that. It killed me. But
What's Ragnar's?
Go run for
Ragnar
days.
is a relay race.
I thought he was a Finn, or I thought he was a Viking.
it's a way to destroy your body if you're not prepared for it. Because it killed me. I don't know why I volunteered for that, but
So CSA would do
Well,
that. They
tell
would,
me, what
they
is
would
it?
put together
A
team.
Ragnar is a relay ultra marathon, and you can do
Mm-hmm.
road or trail. So the road, it's like 120 something mile race, where you have eight.
I hope they're insisting.
Ultra would be 4. You have
There's
8
a lot of
paddle-
bikers in the cars. What is it? A bike I might be able to handle, but
Yeah, you did the coast to coast bike.
yeah.
But yeah, so the Ragnar, you have 8 people on a team split between 2 vans, and you basically leapfrog each other. So one person runs anywhere from 3 to 10 miles.
Oh my word!
And then you drive the van to where they're going to finish,
This
and
is
then
heavy.
the next person runs, and you go all day for 24, 48 hours until you do the whole
So this is a company event. They would do at CSA.
participating in one as a company.
Correct.
We did a lot.
Yeah.
We did Lake Tahoe twice. We did Cape Cod was pretty cool. Road one. We did one up in Ohio.
Yeah.
I picked the easiest one here at Los up here in California, up in the mountains.
Was it the Tahoe one where we were around Lake Tahoe?
No.
No,
the one up
the
in the mountains here, Los Coyotes.
Las Coyotes. Okay.
Yeah.
What are they
that was the
called?
only one I did.
Ragnars?
Yeah, but now look at you. You could be running all over. You're running circles around everybody.
I'd go back and do that now.
Yeah. You're in better shape now, I think, than you were then.
50 pounds lighter and
Yeah.
much better shape.
Makes a lot of difference on your knees.
It does, right?
Yeah.
Every pound is like 2 or 3 pounds off your knees.
Well, the impact, I guess, is that what you're saying? It sounds like
Yeah.
engineering. You've been hanging out with engineers too much.
And so here's my one joke, right? What's the best way to ask a runner if they run? Right? Ask someone if they're a runner. You don't have to; they'll tell you.
Oh, see, that's a CrossFit joke, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, what did the cow say to the chicken?
I don't know.
You look a little under the feather. Yeah, you should recoup.
That is
Give you a
good.
rim shot.
You got the rim shot. I didn't even get a rim shot. You got a rim shot.
I did.
What do you call cheese that doesn't belong to you?
I know this.
It's not your cheese.
Nacho.
Nacho cheese.
Nacho
That's
cheese.
an oldie
Okay,
but goodie.
okay, and then this one. What do you call a cow that doesn't give milk?
Lactose
Intolerant.
intolerant?
Here it is, milk dud.
Man, he's on a roll.
It is too. That's just.
I like milk duds.
Did I tell you that I took my cat's meds the other day? Don't ask me how.
You guys are killing me.
What did Yoda say when he saw himself on a 4K TV? HDMI.
HDMI. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
You know what they call a cow with a nervous twitch? Beef jerky.
Beef jerky. Oh, these are terrible dad jokes. Right there.
Yeah, well, come on.
They're good, yeah.
All right, enough of that.
Oh.
Let's get
wait,
back
wait,
into
wait.
the
Did you hear
program.
Did you hear about the waffle iron with anger issues? He just flipped. Come on. Come on.
That's
That is
appropriate.
definitely a cricket joke.
After all of this, I'm feeling better about my
Your
joking
joke
ability.
ability.
Yeah, you really build me up. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. You did it on purpose. I know.
On porpoise.
On purpose. Yes.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up, Tim, thanks for coming. Like Jimmy said, and Andrea, this was a great
I
conversation.
enjoyed it.
Is there any last thoughts? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to talk about that you're doing?
I mean, I think I appreciate you guys doing these conversations, and because I think it matters that people listen to them and get ideas from them.
But you haven't, I take it, haven't gotten into the SDT, the self-determination theory of motivation yet. You personally, as a
Me personally,
yeah.
probably not. I probably read about it somewhere, but
He's read Drive by Dan Pink, which is based in SCT.
pieces of it. Yeah, I think so. That is obviously a part of, leadership is helping people identify that, because sometimes we've had people get stuck in the
Certain
position they're in,
models of
right, and they can't see a way to get out of it, and they don't know why they're stuck, right. And that's a part of understanding and helping people as a leader is when we're someplace where they don't belong and they can't find a way out, right? I mean, I forget who said it, but when I was at TSA, they said, "Hey, if you want someone to let you go, Tim's the best guy to let you go, right? To fire you, right?"
He's so gentle.
Yeah, he's so gentle about it. But oftentimes it's the right thing for that person, right? Because they're not going to achieve the goals of what they want to do where they're at. And helping them see that is hard, it's painful, right? Because you always feel bad for them because they're people, they have families, all that good stuff. but it's the right thing for them longer term.
I would argue if you did it right, it's not going to be hard to let somebody go, because not always. Occasionally you still just have, but most of the time, the ones that go bad are because in my opinion, the leader didn't do their due diligence to be open and transparent, communicate the issues, help the person fix the issues. And it's usually a mutual agreement, like, yeah, this isn't working. It's not a fit. It wasn't a surprise. So if
And
you
the
do
risk
it
of
right,
being too simplistic, right, is that the saying is, people join a company and leave their manager, right? But if you're
Drea has something to say about that.
But if you're a leader, then what you're saying is it's better, right? It's easier. You feel better about it because you've done all the right stuff to help that person.
I don't think that the high performers leave the corporation because of a leader. They leave it because of the way the leader's treating them, and the corporation's not doing anything with it.
The fairness perception. I like that. I think it's a really great thought or idea, is that, it's that common term. People don't leave the company, they leave their manager.
It's not true.
But the perspective is that, well, no, it's the way the manager's been treating, and that the company isn't doing anything about it to fix that. And it's almost
so it's
a
still
fairness
It's
aspect.
still a company issue, right? They're still leaving.
Right. They're leaving the company because the company didn't address the issues with the leader that caused the problems in the first place.
I like that.
Hard for people to see that. The reason why I was talking about the motivation is that I think that people have such jaundiced views of the word motivation that they really don't appreciate what it really is. It's not about you motivating someone else. It's about the view why somebody does what they do, and that there are several different ways of understanding what is the reason why someone does what they do. And so it's not about the kind of motivation. It's the quality of the motivation, not the amount of it.
Right. So is it more about helping that person find their motivation, their purpose?
It's about the environment. It's really everything you're doing is exactly right. It's all about setting the right environment to help that individual discover why they do what they do, right? And you do that through autonomy. You do it through competence and a sense of relatedness. Yeah. So you've talked about those pieces quite a bit, and I think what Aaron and I are trying to say is, like, once you understand why what you're doing is working, why it's working, you're able to label it. And then now once you can label it, you can replicate it over and over again.
And teach it.
Yeah. So motivation is, you can't make somebody motivated, but you can help them by setting the environment to help them thrive. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at. Yeah.
And when people use the right language and allow for different reasons for why you do it, and that there are some more healthier ways of acting, or more healthier reasons for doing something, it becomes habit forming to such an extent that it's not a battle. It's just how do
identified, integrated.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes intrinsic.
That's right.
That's exactly
That's
it.
it. That's
Yeah,
it.
That's exactly it.
You know anybody that does use that word?
I don't know, but I think it's a great
So-
word.
That's exactly it.
Or,
That's
well,
exactly it.
actually, technicality probably, but intrinsic is more that you're just enjoying it. Really, I think it's becoming identified. It's that fully integrated. That you've integrated it in with your values. It's habitual now.
It's who
It
you
still
are,
could
right.
be an external motivator. It could, the money aspect, or you do the root cause analysis to get to why. Why is it the money? Well, I want to support stability for my family, all these kind of things. But it's really that it could feel fun and it becomes more intrinsic. But I think what's most critical is that you're helping people integrate those into their values and their
Their way of living.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watched any of the Olympics that are going on right now, those kids or those people, they just ooze it. It just comes right out of them, and it's not. They're not doing it because they want to be famous, or they're not doing it because they want to be rich, or because they truly love that activity. They truly love that.
Those are the ones that really can sustain over time and really get to that such a high level.
Yeah. So Ledecky, Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's four Olympics,
Amazing.
still producing. She loves to swim, and I really would like to get this idea about variable motivational, or what I would call it, frames of mind or frames. There's several reasons why somebody does some of it healthy and some of it not so well. Right. And you can't do that to me. I can only do that to myself. Right. And it's extraordinary things that can happen.
But as a leader, we can help.
Yeah, you create the
You
environment.
can create the
Help
environment.
them figure it out.
Yeah, it's that environment that
That's
matters,
exactly.
right, for growth. It's go back to when I started at the beginning, like at G2Ops, we create that environment for our junior engineers, and every new one that comes here in San Diego, I meet with them. I say, hey, you have background experiences that are different than anybody else here. You're bringing in value. Do not be afraid to stand up and make a recommendation. Even if you're in a room with 3 20-year engineers, you've got a point of view that matters. Mm-hmm. And, our 20-year engineers are supportive of that, right?
Psych safety.
Yeah. That's
So it matters. And it's had a huge impact, and it's why we're so successful, because we focus on that, and that drives fantastic delivery. We got a great reputation. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but we've had 21 CPARs from NAVWAR over the last 7 years. And in our delivery quality, we are 100% exceptional.
Whoa.
We've never had anything less than exceptional. And that is driven by that desire and focus on making sure that our people can deliver that, right? Because you can't reach that if your clients are not happy with your people. It's not just a product you deliver, but how you deliver it that matters.
Yeah.
Good stuff. That's good stuff too.
Oh, we have a team of people that do that. I'm no engineer, but I think I help create that environment where those people can deliver that way. Like they feel tied to the work they're doing, to their customer, and they do all the things they need to do.
It's a good soundbite, Tim.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is a good. Yeah, I don't know. I just threw that out there.
We're gonna make a short out of that one.
Yeah. You should.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I'm excited to be a part of this company. Through all the things that small companies go through, the fact that we can deliver like that and make a difference for our clients.
Yep.
How big are you?
We're about 170, 180, somewhere in there. So our max that we've hit. So we'll keep growing. The amazing thing is that, like our CEO, right? She really sets that. She remembers everybody in the company. She meets every new employee. She knows them. She understands their role. She remembers their background. Yeah. Like, I know that's really impossible,
and harder
right?
To do.
Yeah. The older you get, the larger you get.
Yeah. But she will do that. She'll reach out to me and say, hey, Tim, don't forget, hey, I heard about this. Make sure that person, they have this background. They can go do that, right? And so that top-down enables a bottom-up execution.
I always said you have to have a hierarchy in terms of roles, responsibilities. Different people have different roles in what they do and how they fit in the organization. But when it comes to communication, it needs to be flat. Yep. And there's no such thing as going over somebody else. We can talk to whoever we want. Yep. And you could go to a senior leader and they might push you back down to somebody that's the right person to talk to for that certain thing. But as Dre calls it, you speak your truth. You should feel comfortable to do that at any level.
You have to tell your truth to power. You have to be able to do that.
All right. Well, Tim, I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for coming over to the house, to the
My
studio.
Pleasure. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, get the full experience.
Yeah, I did get the full treatment. I mean, experience. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And now as the outro music ramps up,
we just keep talking like
we'll call it a day. We'll call it a day.
I appreciate that.
You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below, or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time,